Hello, and welcome to The Connection. This podcast is about understanding and building the connection we have with others and with ourselves. I hope that through this podcast, you'll be able to have more joy and fulfillment in your life. I'm your host, Jared Hurst. So today is super special. I am really excited for this. This is the first episode that I've ever done where I'm going to do an interview. And this is one of the two most important people in this planet that I could possibly be doing an interview with. And that is my daughter, Caitlin Hurst. Hey, Caitlin. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. So, Caitlin, I wanted to interview you for a number of reasons, but this has been something that I've wanted to talk with somebody about for a long time, specifically you and your sister. When I was a young kid, I used to always think about when I was going to be a parent. And I kept making the promise to myself that when I'm a parent, that I'm going to listen to my kids and I'm going to try and treat them like adults and help them feel like that I respect them and treat them as equals. I don't know if I've done a great job about that, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is I wanted to understand your perspective and just kind of the experience of being a teenager. So I guess the first thing is, what is it like? You know, you're 19. So you basically have 6 years of it being a teenager behind you right now. What has that been like? What, in your mind, what is it like to be a teenager these days?
It's interesting. Honestly, it's a lot. It's scary. It's hard to manage sometimes.
Yeah? What do you mean by it's hard to manage?
There's a lot that is expected of you, honestly. From my perspective.
Yeah.
As a teenager, I feel like we're still growing, and there's a lot put on us, with schooling, getting a good sleep, diet, mental health. There's a lot that goes into being a teenager and the whole social aspect of it.
Yeah, a lot of pressure from a lot of different spaces.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
When you say social, are you talking about your friends, or you're talking about society, or where do you feel social pressure?
Social media a lot.
Yeah? So that's fascinating. I didn't even think about asking you about this, but it makes a ton of sense. How do you view social media? Because the people that are listening that are parents, a lot of us, we did not grow up with social media. It's kind of a new thing. So how does that affect your life, and what kind of pressure does that create for you?
It puts a lot. It's I feel like most of the time it's not I don't know how to explain it, but it's not pressure that they're saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's pressure that they're not directly saying most of the time. You see it in the videos. I don't know. There's a lot that is expected. You have to have the perfect friends. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
No, that's great. So would it be fair to say that the pressure you feel is kind of comes from yourself, but it comes from seeing what you think your life is supposed to look like, or what you think the expectations are on you?
Yeah, definitely. You're supposed to have good grades. You're supposed to be responsible. You're supposed to be able to get all your homework done, be able to go to all these events like dances, activities, do extracurricular, I guess, be able to make friends, be able to mind your parents. There's just a lot that is into being a teenager. It's not as simple as parents may say, or others may say. I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge for parents is we think we know what it's like to be a teenager because we were a teenager. And some of that memory we have of being a teenager is selective. We have selective memories and we don't always remember everything about what it was like. But then also, it's been 15, 20, whatever years since we were teenagers and things have changed a lot. I know when I was a teenager, a lot of the pressure that people talked about was what they saw in magazines and what they saw in music videos. They're like, I need to look like these people and I need to act like these people. And it feels to me like when I look at social media, it's the same concept, but it seems more in your face and there all the time. It seems like social media is always part of your life, and it's a big part of your life. Do you feel like a lot of pressure to be like the people that you see on those platforms?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it doesn't help that, like, you look at it and they all look perfect. It feels like they all look perfect. They show this part of themselves that's just perfect and nothing that's real, I guess. That they struggle with mental issues or anything, and it just kind of gives that unrealistic standard of what it's like to be a teenager.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. It's funny. I think it was around 5 or 6 years ago when I finally started to realize that just because somebody is intelligent, attractive, successful, doesn't mean that they don't have struggles. I know that's kind of a crazy thought, but it feels like all you see from the outside is all the success, and it feels like social media, to your point, is even more so, that it's just all the positive things, all people's wins and successes, and they don't show you any of the negative stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So that actually, there's a lot of questions that I have around that. So not just necessarily social media, but just all the expectations and everything. In your opinion, over the last 6 years of your life, what are the biggest stresses? What are the biggest pressures? Like, what were the things that were top of your mind over the last 6 years of your life?
I think a big one was time management was a big problem, I guess. That was a big thing that was a struggle as a teenager. Like, finding a time for everything was always, I don't know, hard to do. Like, I guess, I feel like they put too much pressure and they don't think about the fact, like teachers or parents, I feel like they don't understand that we can't get everything done in one day. Like, I feel like a lot of the times parents expect us to clean our room and get all these chores done, and then on top of that, be able to get all this homework done that teachers have piled on us, and still be able to do other stuff as well. And the thing is, it's not the most important thing. Sleep is the most important. And sometimes I feel like, sometimes with parents, my mom, but it's nothing bad that my mom does, but I feel like sometimes she's like, okay, this is more important than you getting your sleep at the moment. And that sleep is a lot more of a priority. I feel like, I don't know, it's too much expected and not enough time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do remember feeling like there wasn't nearly enough time in the day when I was a teenager. The one thing I'll tell you is that seems to escalate as you get older. It feels like there's even more restraints on your time and even more demands on your time as you have kids, as you get married, as you get into the workforce. There's a lot of that, and I think one thing that I've recognized is that your level to your ability to handle and manage time increases as there's more demands put on you. So I think it's kind of like The analogy I use for a lot of things is like going to the gym. Is you have more weight, you get better at lifting heavier and heavier things over time. And I think that's just how life is the more we put on ourselves in any area of life, you just get better at it. But I could understand what you're saying, because you're figuring it out for the first time, right? Like, how am I going to manage all that? Just as a side question, do you feel like when you look at that, in addition to the expectations that are put on you, maybe being too much, do you feel like maybe there's some things that you could have done differently, where maybe have you prioritized sleep at the level that you should?
Yeah, there was definitely some times. Although it didn't help that I was introduced to a phone early. That, like, it wasn't a bad thing because I was begging for a phone.
Yeah.
But let's just say I don't, like, I know it's important to have a phone for, like, communication and all that stuff. But honestly, I think I would have done a lot better if I didn't have a phone with me. Because it took a lot of my time and a lot of my focus. Like, I think there was more times I was on my phone than doing all my stuff because I just was so glued to it.
Yeah. Well, it's a really important part of, like, your ability to connect socially, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Do you feel like if you wouldn't have had a phone that you would have felt like you were losing out on your ability to connect with your friends and be able to have a social life without one?
No, I feel like I could have found other ways. Like, I feel like using it in moderation could have been a little bit better.
Do you think back then, if you would have been told that you would have believed them, though? Or would you have been fighting to, like, have a phone?
It was better than having a watch, honestly.
Yeah, because you had like a little watch, and you felt you needed the phone in order to kind of be an adult,
10
right?
contacts is not enough to be social.
Yeah. Fair enough. You know, it's funny. They've got these laws and things that they're trying to pass. Some stuff I've heard is just suggestions. Some stuff I've heard is like things that they're actually trying to do. But I know they're talking about making it to where you can't be on social media unless you're over the age of 16. I know I saw somebody, I think they were in front of like some type of, you know, like a political situation, like a Senate hearing or something like that, where they were suggesting that teenagers not be allowed to have a phone until they're 16, or not allowed on social media until they're 16, and not allowed to have a phone until they're 14. Do you think that is something that should be implemented? Like, how would you feel about something like that? Do you feel like kids would be better off without having social media till a certain age?
Honestly, yeah. That's just my thing. It definitely puts a lot of pressure early on, and that's something that we don't need to focus on. Like, now that I'm looking back, I'm like, I don't need social media to do it. And honestly, it would have probably saved me a lot of, like, struggle that I have. Because I struggle with, like, being addicted to it sometimes. I just deleted social media, actually, which is funny that we're talking about it. It definitely has brought a cycle of getting obsessed with it, and then not, and then deleting it, and then a few months later getting obsessed with it, and then deleting it. I think having a phone is important, though. That one, I don't think 14. Like, to be honest, I think younger. But, like, I guess having limitations to the phone.
Gotcha. So you feel the ability to text and call is important, but necessarily using the social media aspects not.
No, it really isn't. There's more important things like education, actually getting out there and hanging out with friends, and
gotcha.
Not focusing on others' opinions.
But the texting and calling is important in your opinion. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I could see where that's like a big part of what you do now. Like when I was a kid, makes me feel really old, but you know, we had to pick up a phone that was attached to our house, right? Like we didn't have phones that could go with us, so it wasn't something that you'd spend some time on the phone talking to your friends, but more often than not, it was like, hey, can I come over? So then that way we can hang out and talk. And I think it's interesting how that's just changed to where we don't have to get together in order to talk anymore. Yeah, that's fascinating to me. Well, to kind of switch it up a little bit, I'm interested and only answer this in as much as you feel comfortable. But I'm curious about the things that you see as a teenager here in Utah. Do you feel like drugs and alcohol, is that something that you feel like you saw much of? Or was it something that, you hear about, but nobody really ever brought that to you and tried to offer it to you and that kind of thing?
No, I mean, the only encounter I've had is, like, I had a friend who, like, was trying to smoke, or I think it was something to do with drugs or something, like, in junior year, but, like, it was, like, where she was doing it, but she wasn't offering it.
Yeah.
It's, like, I've never really encountered just the area I'm in, and I don't really, there's not much in with it. It's a safe area, Kaysville and Layton area. I mean, maybe that might be something common in Ogden or something, because I've had friends who've talked about how, like, in the Ogden area, there's been something like that.
They've had more of those experiences growing up in Ogden than you have.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. I also think your friend base makes a big difference, like who you hang out with and all that stuff.
Definitely.
The one that makes me really sad is, and I know this is a deep topic, so if you don't want to talk about it, by all means, we can pass on it, but is suicide. When I was a kid, from the time I was in junior high through high school, I knew 2 kids that had committed suicide in 6 years of school. But I remember talking with somebody once who said that they had 7 suicides at their high school that year. Have you seen much talk about suicide or people threatening it, or is that much? Because I'm curious, because this was somebody that I knew down in Harriman, and they made it sound like it was all over the place, that it was really common.
See, in my area, there isn't, like, I've never even heard of a kid
committing suicide
in our area. I mean, like, there are there's plenty of kids nowadays that are constantly making jokes about it or dealing with those kind of issues. I haven't really, I guess it's depending on my group, I guess. I wasn't the most social person, so I wasn't, like, I didn't have many friends who were, like, had those issues, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with it a little bit myself, but I didn't really encounter much with it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because you only have your own experiences to go from, but I think I would wager that there's a lot of people that have at least thought about it in passing, but not seriously considered it. Like, I remember when I was a kid, there was times where I felt really overwhelmed and sad and depressed. And I remember there was times where I thought about it, but I never seriously considered it. It was just kind of like a passing thought of, like, maybe I should just jump out my window right now, because I just was, dealing with these really strong emotions, but I don't know that I ever actively... Does that make sense? So I think a lot of people have times where they're in a lot of pain and it feels like, they at least think about it briefly, that maybe this would be easier than not having to deal with what I'm dealing with right now.
See, what's interesting is I see more of it in college.
Really?
Like, I've actually talked to a lot more people, and they're like, yeah, I've had times where I've wanted to actually just die, and it's interesting.
That's sad.
But it's less known in high school because a lot of high schoolers hide that.
You think that the college kids are just more open about talking about what they're going through?
No, I feel like it's just more stressful, I guess.
Oh, that's interesting.
It honestly, like from elementary up to 12, like it's not very stressful. Like it's like, okay, mind your mom, do your best in school. That's pretty much it. It's nothing like too much. But then like once you reach that age where like you're a teenager, to me it feels like you get put all this pressure, like you're going through puberty and all these things. And like I said, there's a lot of like build up and all that. And then it just gets worse when you get to high school, because you're like you're taking from this life where you're able to have somebody taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, you have all this crazy like dating, finances, education, work, being able to be okay with your parents if you're living with them. Like there's so many different things that it just keeps building up over the years. Like 13 you're okay, then like 15 you're like, that's a little crazy, and then it gets worse because you're expected more and more, like college and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, there is a lot of that there. It's interesting. I was listening to this podcast, this scientist, and he was saying that there's some type of biological thing where teenagers have a change to their brain where they literally want to have more freedom and like they want more of adult privileges. But at the same time, they're young enough that they don't really want all of the responsibilities either. Did you feel like that was something that was true, that as you got older, you wanted a lot more freedom, but then at the same time, you were scared to have it? Scared about all the responsibilities? So
yeah, definitely I was like, oh, that would be really fun. Like all through high school. See, now I want it, but at the same time, I'm dealing with it right now. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Growing up is kind of scary. Some people really struggle with the idea of being an adult. They're like, nope, I'm really comfortable with this whole kid thing. And some people, it feels like they're just chomping at the bit. They can't wait for their independence and being out on their own. And it's like, I'm ready to rock.
I think it doesn't help how the environment they are raised in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you look at people your age and your generation and everything, what do you think are like your biggest worries about the future? What do you think people your age want as far as life? Do you still think it's everybody wants to get married and have kids and buy a house and all that stuff? Or do you think there's more people your age that you hear that are thinking, I don't know if I want kids? Or do you think that everybody's like stressing? Like, I guess, what do you think people like you and people your age are thinking when they look at the future?
Honestly, if I'm like, I talk to some people and most of them are just wanting to pay the next bill. I don't think anyone's really focused about getting married anytime soon. I mean, I am, but like the thing is, it's everyone's aspect. But I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, I just want to pay the next bill and be able to get through this next assignment. Or like, I think we're a little more focused on the present, more of the future. Like when I hear people, when it's like, what do you want to do in 5 years? Or what do you want your life to be in 5 years? No one's really like
looking that far ahead.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, maybe get married, maybe have kids, or maybe have an education. More trying to figure out what you want to do in this life.
That makes sense. So everybody is like just worried about their school, about paying the bills, getting their job done and homework and just whatever it is that they're dealing with at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. What do you feel like are some of the misconceptions about teenagers, or things that you don't feel are fair? Just like if you were to have a platform here to talk out and represent the teenagers, what would you want people to know, or what do you feel passionate about in that respects?
We're not lazy.
Okay.
It's so frustrating when you're on a Saturday morning and you need to sleep and your mom's like, wake up, it's time to do some laundry or whatever activity you need to go get done. The thing is, we're not lazy. we've got a lot going on us sometimes, and a lot of mental stresses. And the thing is, a lot of mental health can be a big factor. And I feel like some people think we can't do it. Especially with this generation, I've seen a lot of like outbursts of like how, oh yeah, we're lazy and they're not going to get anything done in this life. I'm like, well, you guys parented us, and like, I'm not lashing on us, but the thing is, like, we are a product of your guys's like experiment. Like, the thing is, I'm not trying to lash on you guys.
No, it's true. Like, I think that was incredibly well said, that you are a product of how we chose to raise you. So, touche.
And like a lot of people, they expect so much, and like I've seen so many people like look down on our generation, and it's like I've heard so many comments of like, you guys are lazy and rude and all these things. Like, you're just
you feel
emotional.
Attacked.
I definitely attacked, and it's like, well, the thing is, it really is how we were raised. And the thing is, I feel like we need to get a little more credit and not be seen as these tyrants, or I guess not seen for, like, I don't know, so spoiled. Like, I've heard comments about how we're all spoiled and all that. I'm like, well, no.
Yeah. It's interesting. I read this book not too long ago, and there's just a few concepts in it that really hit me. But one of the concepts that's really stuck with me is that one of the biggest thing that divides people is identity. Mm-hmm. So if I put myself as being a man and I put you as being a woman, and then I create conflict around it, then it's going to divide us, because if I say something about women, then you feel like I'm attacking something that's part of your identity. Same thing around politics, religion, etc. And I do think there's an interesting thing where it does feel like there's an identity to, this is your generation and this is how you're viewed. And what's interesting, I mean, if you look at it, they've had like scientific studies and different things where they've shown that the way that you treat people is kind of how they end up acting. And it's like, if everybody keeps telling you that you're lazy and spoiled, then at some point you start to believe it, and then you start acting the role. And it's, like, we're probably not doing you any favors by saying that. I love my parents, but they often told me when I was a kid that I was lazy. And I would go to work, and it never felt like I did enough as an adult, because in my mind I had labeled myself as lazy because my parents told me I was lazy. Mm-hmm. And it took me a lot of work. I'm still working to it to this day, where there's issues where I have to overcome that identity of labeling myself as lazy. Even when I worked really hard, I had a time during my life where I was working 80-hour weeks, and I still considered myself lazy, because that was part of my identity. So that's interesting. I think that's fair. That's an interesting perspective of what you say about just like we raised you.
My friend put it in a good way. We're your guys' guinea pigs,
Guinea pigs. That's fair. Well, you'll get your own guinea pigs, and then they'll blame you for all the things that you did wrong, and vice versa. Yeah. It's funny, is we all... I've often thought that I would love to take the knowledge I have now and go back and re-raise you and your sister, because I feel like I'm so much better equipped to be a parent now than I was 10, 15 years ago. But now it's like, well, crud. I'm doing my best to use the knowledge and the information I have now to help you while I can, but there is part of me, it feels like I could have been a better dad if I could go back. But maybe that's everybody feels that way, because you get experience, right?
That's where you come in. Like, the thing is, when I have children, you'll be able to help me in the ways that you couldn't help entirely us, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, stuff that, like, you didn't feel like you could do then, but you could do now. You can share that knowledge.
Thanks.
later on.
I appreciate that. That's helpful. Assuming you let me help out, because at that point you're like, well, I'm the parent now. I get to make the decisions. Back off. This is my guinea pig. Well, I appreciate you talking with me. Before we end everything, I'm curious. What is it that you wish? What is it that you wish parents knew? And what is it that you, I don't know, do you have any parting words for parents out there or for teenagers out there that you think's important?
So this is what keeps going through my brain lately, because I've been thinking about like all the ways that I've been parented lately and how I want to parent, and I think this is a big thing that I want to, like, I guess stress.
Okay.
Is be kind with them. Be kind with kids, because the thing is, I guess yelling may get it through their head, but you gotta remember, it's like when they were learning to walk. You didn't yell at them when they were walking, did you?
Nope.
No, it's the thing is, they're growing, they're learning to be a person. And the thing is, I feel like giving them that mercy and giving them, like, I guess, being a little kinder, I guess. Like, not that it's bad to yell. I think there are times when it's appropriate to yell.
Yeah.
But, like, being considerate of the fact that they're learning to be in this world and they're still new, they're still fresh out of the womb. Like, the thing is, they're still, like, it's not like they're 30 or 40. They're just barely 10 years off.
Yeah, even 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds still...
Even at 20, you're still, like, figuring things out.
I'm 44 and I'm still figuring things out. I think, it's hard. I look at it and I think there's a place for respect and minding your parents and understanding that sometimes you just have to lay down the law and this is what it is and this is what's going to happen. But then I also think there's room for compassion and love and kindness and patience and growth. So it's like trying to figure out that balance. Like, how do I find the right balance between being loving and compassionate, but also demanding a work ethic and demanding respect and things like that? Because when you get out into work and you get out into life, if you don't have any semblance of respect for authority, that's going to shoot you in the foot too, because you're not gonna last very long in a job if you can't know when to be quiet and follow orders. But then it's also very important that you express yourself and have your identity. And so, that's...
And I get what you're saying. That's more or less what I try to say. And there is a time and a place for everything. That's what I try to think about. Is, like, the thing is, there are times when you need to lay down the law. But there are times that need to be more kind-hearted and patient, and like you're saying.
That makes sense. Well, I think you're going to be a great mom just based on this conversation.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. I really want to thank Caitlin for doing this interview with me today. I feel like it gave me some really powerful insights. It's so easy to look back at our childhood and feel like we understand what it's like to be a teenager, but not realize how much things have changed and realize how much we've forgotten. I forgot how intense it is to manage everything. When we look back as adults and we look at what a child has to manage and we look at what a teenager has to manage, it's really easy to compare it to what we're managing and saying, oh man, that would be so easy. I remember when I started my first job, working a 4-hour-a-day job felt overwhelming. and then working an 8-hour-a-day job and thinking, wow, I really wish I could go back to 4 hours. That was nothing. So I think our perspective as adults makes it really easy for us to look at what they're doing and what they have on their plate and not give it credit to how difficult and challenging it is, and lose sight of how difficult it was for us to manage those things. They have so many pressures that we didn't have on our plate. The social media, the expectations. It feels like kids are growing up faster today than they were when we were kids. And I really miss those years of being able to just be a kid. Hopefully, as you listen to this, you can see where this can benefit you as a parent, or if you're a teenager, or a grandparent, or wherever your position is in life, that you can see where you can take something from this. And if you did enjoy this format of doing an interview, then please, I would love to hear what your thoughts were. I would love to hear what kind of interviews you'd like to hear in the future. And if you have anybody that you think would be a good person to be interviewed, please connect me with them. Finding people that would be interested in an interview or would be somebody that could contribute to this podcast is probably one of the biggest things you could do to help me outside of sharing this podcast with others. Anytime you can share this podcast with others and help me to grow this community, I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. And anytime that you can offer me feedback or additional people that I can talk with, I would appreciate that as well. Whatever you're going through in life, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, I hope you know that I believe in you. I know that you can do it. And until next week, remember that you are not alone.